Hello, everyone. Welcome back to LoFi History. I am Libba, and we've also got Glen and Marie. Hello, welcome. It's been a whole month since we last had our LoFi History, and I see we're time traveling again today. We've got Glen in a lovely sailor outfit, and Marie in a lovely dress and a sun hat, perhaps?
Well, it's just a hat, which does protect from the sun.
Ah, excellent.
But it was very fashionable in the 18th century, this low crown here.
Oh, lovely. Well, we'll get to the specifics soon, but if this is your first time joining us, then welcome to LoFi History. This is a production of the Cottrell Digital Studio at the Northeast Georgia History Center, where we answer your history questions. Well, Glenn and Marie do. I just sit back and
Sometimes
enjoy.
we make Libba.
If it's Girl Scout related, I got it. But otherwise, I see we've already got Hannah is here. Hello, Hannah.
Hey, Hannah.
Terry from Iowa. Hello, Terry.
Iowa.
And Richard's here. Hey, Richard.
Yay!
And Mary Lou is also here. Hello, Mary Lou. Well, friends, we are here to answer your questions. So if you want to go ahead and start to chat your questions, we would love to answer them to the best of our ability. Ooh, and on Twitch, we also have Wheelless Studios. Hey, Wheelless Studios. That is Sarah, who has actually been on our podcast before. She is an incredible artist and a quilter, in fact. Marie got to interview her, which was really fun.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So let's start out. Marie, why don't we start with you, and please tell us, what are you wearing?
So today I am wearing my tartan dress. I just got to debut it this weekend at a local 18th century market fair. So I was like, you know what? I had such fun wearing it this weekend. I'm going to wear it again. But this is my tartan dress. I made it in what was financially affordable for me, closest to the Campbell tartan, which is the tartan of my husband's clan.
Aha.
And therefore I made it. There are several tartan garments in existence, the most famous being the Isabella McFraser wedding gown. So I kind of tried to base it a little bit off of that. I did the English seams, which is in the back where there's just one big seam in the back instead.
Okay.
So this is probably a more mid 18th century dress, just by the styling of it, and also with the bum pad that I had.
Did you just say a bum pad?
Yes, a bum pad.
That sounds mighty comfy. Is it comfortable to sit on?
Well, basically, it's just like a giant pillow that you tie onto your waist. So
nice.
Yes, it gives you the skirt a nice full look and makes your rump look rather large and your waist look rather small. So that's always a fun thing.
Some things never change.
The 18th century had a lot of false rumps.
Yeah.
Various styles. This one's what I would consider a bum pad.
Uh-huh.
This one, it also has like the nice little cuffs, which the Isabella McFraser wedding gown has, that I kind of modeled it after.
Yeah.
And then I also embroidered my stomacher here. So
stomacher.
yes,
okay.
that it goes over the stomach.
There you have
which
it.
makes sense. And then it's actually held together with these pins, which you can probably kind of see the heads of. They're just like steel pins.
Oh, wow.
And they have fun little like coiled heads on them because they're supposed to be period.
Is there any danger of getting poked?
Yes.
Oh no.
If you do not fasten yourself correctly, you can and will get poked.
Oh dear.
But see, you're supposed to like kind of put it into your stays almost.
Oh, okay.
And that's one of the other reasons why you're supposed to wear stays in this time period. Is the stays reduce your chance of getting poked, and also is supposed to kind of like hold everything together.
Right.
I also have a fishue on, because it is during the day, after all. I can't tell if our background is inside, outside. It's somewhere in the tiny, whiny, wibbly, wobbly
things.
things.
Within the time warp.
It's whenever you want it to
Exactly, but I can't tell if it's inside or outside.
It's wherever you want it to be.
Yeah.
Well, just in case, I still have my hat on. Of course, if you go outside, you want to wear a hat, because this is your sun protection, this is your sunscreen, and you don't want to look tan, because that means you look like you are a working person. Of course, I would also need gloves, but the fishue and the hat would indicate that I would be going out and about. Yes,
that's interesting. You mentioned something that I never really thought about before. Like, so are you telling me that paleness was sort of like, oh, I'm so fancy, I don't even have to work outside.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Well, I would be the fanciest person. Oh, that's excellent. That's great to know. All right.
Yes.
Now, so you found the material and you got a good deal on it and you saved money making the dress?
No, not necessarily. I couldn't afford like the actual tartan.
Oh, so you skimped a little bit,
Yes.
which is the most Scottish thing about the dress.
I didn't pay for the actual tartan. I
Yeah,
found one that
right.
looked close enough that was cheaper.
Yeah.
That's the way, Lassie.
Well, it's beautiful,
Thank you.
I love the whole ensemble is very charming.
really
Another
cool.
fun thing about pins and why men get buttons in the 18th century, but women do not. And one of the things is because that way it makes everything very adjustable. Because
that
ladies
makes sense.
are generally in various stages of pregnancy
Right.
for most of their adult lives, and therefore you need your dresses to adjust because you are not going to buy multiple dresses.
Wow, that's fascinating. Maybe that sounds like a cool like motherhood in the or the 19th century or something.
Yes.
All right.
That'd be really interesting.
Someone write that down. I'll do it. There you go, Glenn. Well, that's really fascinating. Very cool. Well, Glenn, on to you. You look like maybe 100 years later or something. I don't really know.
Oh, at least, yes.
At least.
I'm all at sea when I try to describe this uniform.
Yeah. So, what you got going on?
It's sailor stuff.
It's sailor stuff, but what?
No, so that's the beauty is that, so what I have on is technically, except for the sunglasses, a World War II sailor uniform. They are made of wool. It's you may not can tell. It's actually a very, very dark blue rather than a black.
Right. Yeah.
And it's got the banding on here. So this is the dress blue uniform with a scarf with a neckerchief that goes around. It has a little flap on the back with the designs. This is the jumper. They have an undress without all the white stuff. And this is sort of based on formal sailor clothing going all the way back to the early 1800s because the Navy is the home of tradition. And so this is the type of uniform that they would have worn, and it continues all the way up to this day. The enlisted men still have their dress blue wools that are still mostly of wool, not all wool. They still look like this. There's this hat. There's technically, for your dress blues pre-World War II, it's called the Donald Duck hat. If you see Donald Duck cartoons, it's got like, that's the hat that's supposed to go with this outfit with the sailors. But when World War II comes along, they don't issue all those because they're complicated. You were supposed to have the name of your ship on that, and that's an intelligence breach. So you can't have all the sailors with whatever ship they're on.
Wow.
So they just adopted the standard Dixie cup to go along with this. And so this is when they got shore leave. This is what they're going to go on and dress in to have a good time, to see the town, to pick up dames, to get in fights with the Marines.
To start suddenly singing in musical
Exactly.
fashion.
Yes. So it's a neat little uniform. It's pretty neat. But they very rarely wore these shipboard. By World War II, the traditional stuff is for dress. Shipboard, they're wearing much more practical things. Blue jeans, cotton shirts. They're still wearing this because the Navy is the home of tradition.
Now, can you flip it down as well, or is it always
you
worn
can?
that way?
It's built to do that so that it can be sort of an all-weather cap.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Now we're in the 90s.
But
Yay.
it's kind of dorky and dumb like that. So what they did was, the reason you have this hat is because you can take it, fold it small, and it can go in your pocket or it can go in your duffel bag.
Nice.
Remember, these things don't get folded. All the Navy stuff gets rolled.
Okay, right.
Because that's how you stow it away. You stow it in a duffel bag, and so everything gets rolled up. Very few things actually get folded. So what that does is it makes this cap have this cool look about it. And one of the things they were allowed to do is you could basically personalize your outfit from about here up. Because you could make this hat, fold it and twist it. You could wear it anywhere on your head that you wanted to. You'll see pictures. It's so far back, a couple of people apparently use bobby pins
Oh my goodness.
to keep it on, or they would put it AJ squared away just straight up like that. They'll put it in an angle. You can do anything you want with your hat
Oh, that's really cool.
from here up.
Nice,
Okay.
nice. Well,
So is the like collar detachable?
No, it's attached.
Oh, okay.
And it's not
Okay.
part of the neckerchief. That's the interesting thing. So the neckerchief is just a square neckerchief that's folded, and is tied here now. Originally, of course, it was the whole thing.
Yes.
But now it's got this little thing in the back
Okay.
that
So
just falls
that's attached
back.
to the shirt.
That's
but
attached to
then
the
you
shirt.
put the neckerchief under it to kind of give it body.
Yes, to kind of give it that look.
Okay. Okay.
And it's talking to a couple of guys. It's interesting because I wasn't kidding when I said that the sailors are going to go on shore leave and get in fights with the Marines. Marines and sailors hate each other
Oh, really?
so very much.
Has that been a rivalry, like, for a really long time?
Since Tun's Tavern on November 10th, 1775.
All right, don't know anything about that, but maybe someone can ask a question and put that in the queue.
And it's because when they were sent ashore, there's not much to this uniform. It doesn't have pockets.
What? Why
What's
doesn't it
that there,
have
then?
pockets?
Oh, it has this. That's it.
Okay.
It has one.
It has
pocket.
this. You can't really
has
hide
a
weapons in
frocket.
this.
Yeah.
So apparently what they would do is they would take their belt off and wrap it around their fist, and they would use that to flail about with the Marines. And the
Good.
Marines would also take their belt and do that sort of thing. The neckerchief you can choke people
Oh, my
with.
goodness.
Fantastic.
But they all came together to fight, Germans and Japanese. But
They
yeah.
hate
if
them
there-
more.
if there were no, well, I don't know if I'd go that far.
Oh, okay.
It's a very interesting dynamic.
We'll
The
bring-
only sailors that Marines love are the ones that go ashore with them and are their medics.
Ah, right. Well, that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, fascinating. Maybe
It is
we'll bring on a
fascinating.
Marine and a sailor to duke it out one day. But
That's
in
right.
the meantime, I see we've already got. We've got some more people joining us.
Hello.
So we've got Alma is here. Hello, Alma. And we also have Bobble DJ on Twitch. Hello, Bobble.
Hey.
And Fried is here.
Fried.
Our German friend Fried on Twitch. So good to see you, my friend. Fried says it's so good to see you again. Hope you're all well.
Been months.
And Fried says, nice outfits. I recently listened to a podcast on the Straw Hat Riots. That's probably not in reference to it, though. The Straw Hat Riots. Fried, maybe tell us a little bit more about that. That's interesting. But we do have a few questions in the queue. And of course, if you're just joining us, go ahead and chat your questions for historians Marie and Glenn. I'll be looking out in the chat for your questions. And, I see we've already got one I need to add to the queue. So, Glenn and Marie, our first question comes from Hannah on Facebook. And Hannah wants to know, could you explain how substituting worked during the Revolutionary War?
First, Glenn's second rule of history. Everything's complicated.
Yes.
There was no draft per se in the American Revolution in terms of going into the Continental or regular Army. There was, however, militia duty that was required of every able-bodied male between the ages of, depending upon what colony, 18 to 45. And so if you didn't want to go, you had per colonial or state law, you had a couple of options. You could either pay a fine or find a substitute. And usually you would have to pay a substitute to go take your place. Some people try to use their enslaved servants to go and be their substitutes, which by law you were not allowed to do, but sometimes people still try to do it anyway and cheat. And there's a really great story of a Georgian, Austin Dabney, who was put forward as a substitute for his owner, who was not a very nice person. We don't know much about him, but everything we do know is bad. About his owner, not about
Right.
Austin Dabney.
Right.
And so Austin continued, and he went ahead, he went in, and as a result of his service, he was given his freedom, he was given land. But that's sort of how substitution worked. And again, this is all this is in much the era before reliable universal records, right? So it was very easy to sneak around, do different things. Sometimes you could get a bounty for signing up for a particular length of time or for participating in a certain battle. And it became very easy to falsify records because there's no central electronic database to check everything
I
against.
see. That reminds me, though, if you are a teacher or a homeschool group leader, we actually offer a live webcast with Austin Dabney, the historic character portrayed by our fantastic living history interpreter, Mustafa Slack. Or you can check out our YouTube channel. If you search for Austin or Austin Dabney, you'll see our live stream program where you can see Mustafa's portrayal of Dabney, as well as he and Glenn portraying the friendship that they had. Glenn,
Yeah.
do you want to tell a little bit, just because it's so interesting, about the relationship between Austin Dabney and Giles Harris, I believe it was.
Yeah, so I love doing this with Mustafa because it is not a universal example from the time period. I think it's remarkable, but its very remarkableness reflects better on our own time than it does on that time. It was so unique then, but it speaks to us now. So Austin Dabney was substituted for his owner Aycock, to go into the militia. He fights at the Battle of Kettle Creek in Georgia in February of 1779, I think it is.
I think that's right, yeah.
And he's wounded. And so he's working on a gun crew. He's working, I think it's a 3-pounder, and he's wounded in the leg, and things are not going well for the Patriots. And so a lot of them start to, the technical term is skedaddle. And Giles Harris happens upon Austin laying there wounded, and rather than just continuing to run off, he grabs him up, he picks him up. Harris lives close by, so he half carries, half drags Austin to his home. Giles is a white person, by the way.
Right.
Right? Make that very clear.
Right.
Austin Dabney is a black person, and Giles takes him to his home. His wife helps take care of him. They heal his leg. And what comes out of that is an enduring friendship for the rest of their lives together. And they become very close. There is no racial barrier between them. They consider each other friends. Their farms end up being right next to each other. Austin Dabney works for Giles Harris, helps him on his farm. Giles has a couple of kids, and one of them he names for Austin Dabney.
Yeah.
And Austin Dabney, later on in life, gives this kid money to go to school. Right? So the former slave has enough money to give his neighbor's namesake son money to go to school. So these two develop, unfortunately for the time, unusual, but a remarkably progressive's not even the word. It's a heartwarming human story between these two people that should have been on totally different, parts of the social strata, and yet here they are, best friends for life.
And we have there is one depiction of Austin Dabney later in life. As Glenn mentioned, he was quite revered in Georgia, specifically. I recall reading a story that Mustafa also relays in our livecast, or our webcast, that Austin was going to Savannah with a friend, a white friend, to gather his pension. And apparently was it the governor of Georgia? Would the governor of Georgia have lived in Savannah?
Yeah, at that point, yeah.
Yeah, so high-ranking official spots Dabney and invites him to stay at his home, be his guest, while his white friend has to go stay at the not-so-great tavern down the road. And it just speaks to, how well he was known and really seen as quite a hero. But thank you so much, Hannah, for that question about substitutions during the Revolutionary War. And again, if you want to check out our program about Austin Dabney, just search Austin on our YouTube channel and you will see it. Oh, I also see Terry has some exciting news. Her daughter sold 755 Girl Scout cookies.
Holy
wow.
moly.
That's a lot.
Impressive.
Congratulations to your daughter.
That's a lot of trips for the little red wagon.
Yes. Juliet Lowe would be very proud. So let's see. We also, Freed also gave us a little more insight to this whole straw hat riot. Okay, let's see. So straw hats used to be popular hats during the summer, but there was an official cutoff point when you had to go back to wearing normal hats. And if you didn't, people would knock your hat off your head. Youths in New York got too full of themselves and started knocking hats off before the date that escalated into a 3-day brawl between thousands of people in 1922. Oh my goodness.
1920, that means they're like those straw boaters.
Yeah.
Oh, the New York Utes.
Wow. We need to definitely look that up. Thank you, Freed. That's fascinating.
Wow.
All right,
Very
friends.
interesting.
So our next question comes from our friend Richard. And Richard is also a fantastic living history interpreter. So Richard asks, what do you think would have happened in the 1760s and 1770s if, instead of imposing the stamp tax, King George III had just gone to the colonial governors and told them to raise money? Okay, so would it have been seen as less aggressive or less tyranty?
I think we'd still be speaking English today.
Zing.
Ding.
So first of all, why don't we go back
Yeah.
a little bit and explain why did the Stamp Act happen in the first place? Was it all to raise money for what?
So, do you want me to take this one?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So,
I'll jump in if I need to from here about.
So, well, America does not like being taxed necessarily, but because if we go forward, before even the taxes happen, we have the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War, as it is known in the American colonies. But in the wider world sense, it's called the 7 Years' War because, well, and it was basically like the First World War. It got everybody involved. England, France, I think Spain got involved.
Battles were in India.
Wow.
All over the ocean.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So, and of course, at this point, Great Britain has expanded its empire, its colonial empire, all over the world. So, of course, there's fighting going on in lots of places because they have control over a lot of those places. So, they have this giant war, basically kind of started by George Washington for America's protection, or at least that's how the story goes. And of course, in America, the primary people who it was against was the French and Native Americans who had allied themselves with the French. There were also some Native Americans who allied themselves with the English, us Americans at that point still being English. But it seemed like more Native Americans had allied themselves with the French. And they did not want the English to expand anymore onto their land. So therefore, the 7 Year War ends. Basically, the colonial boundaries are now very firmly established, pretty much on the Appalachian Mountain region.
And France is totally kicked out of North America.
Yes.
At this point.
So basically, if the colonial establishment, like the English colonies, are very firmly established along that mountain region, it's because they don't want American colonists to go across into the Ohio River Valley and such and disturb the Native Americans who have been living there and cause more conflict. But America didn't like that. They felt like they had fought this entire giant war for nothing? For a firm establishment of a boundary that says I can't go across there? And of course, people do not like being told what to do.
Americans especially.
Especially Americans. So they see that that's this boundary here, and of course they want to test it. They don't like that. And then, of course, England had spent a huge amount of money on this war defending them.
Not just spend it, borrowed it.
I
Yes.
see. So they owe some.
They had to get it. They had to spend it. They had to get it to spend it. So.
Yes, and then they had to pay it back.
Yeah.
So, trying to recoup this war debt cost, they were like, you know what, America, we spent a lot of money trying to defend you and establishing a very nice border for you now, so you don't have to worry about anything. Could you pretty please, give us some money via taxes?
Well, if only they had, that's what Richard's point, right? If they had
Yes.
said, would you please give us tax money? What they
But
said
alas,
was,
they did not.
here are the taxes you will pay. Thank you.
And
Please
these,
do it.
and these stamp taxes, I mean, they were on anything that could be stamped. Is that why it's
They
called?
were on anything made of paper.
And
Pretty
this-
much paper tax.
I've got an image coming up. Is this the type of stamp that would have been on
Yes.
the
Yeah.
image? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and share it.
Yes.
I was like, hey, it looks like it.
Yeah, so I mean they have, Parliament and England come up with several different schemes to try to raise the money to pay off this unprecedentedly huge debt that they had incurred fighting, kicking the French out of North America to provide it for the North Americans. And so that's that's what Richard's getting at, is that Parliament says, here are your taxes you have to pay.
And America was like, hey, but we didn't exactly agree to that.
Right.
We didn't get to vote on this. We didn't get to say in it. But England's like, but we did it for you.
Right. And so England and Parliament, and especially King George, use this as an opportunity to say, we are in charge. You're just colonists. You are already represented by us. You'll do what we say. And the Americans were basically saying, just ask us for the money. The respective colonial legislatures would vote to pay the money, but it's us voting because we represent our constituents. Tell us how much you need from us per year, and the local bodies will vote it. That's not what happened, because Parliament said that's too much sovereignty 3,000 miles across the ocean. So that became the sticking point that goes all the way to eventually declaring independence.
So that's why you have the whole thing of no taxation without representation, because they felt like they were being taxed without being represented. But if we did that fun what if,
yes.
It would be, well, if they were represented, would they still have been mad? Probably not.
See, I think that would have, I don't know if it's too much to say the revolution never would have happened, but man, if they had just said, basically, they would have created the Commonwealth way earlier than they did if they had done that. If they had basically said, your body, the king is the sovereign, you're still part of the empire, but your respective colonial representative bodies can vote the tax themselves. If they had done that, the colonists would have been
And what was the big reason to not do was it simply to exert power over the colonists?
Parliament did not want to surrender the power to tax to the respective colonial governments.
It's a sort of a slippery slope at that point. It's like, we let you do that. Okay.
Then
I thought this was a really cool depiction of the reaction reading the Stamp Act in King Street opposite the State House. Now, I see that people, I mean, is this just a newspaper, a broadside? How would people have known about this? Would they just one day, now I owe more money for this good? I mean, how would it have been, how would that have spread throughout
it would have been disseminated through the newspapers and the print shops. Yes. So
like these angry people we see.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, you're going to see, there's not enough for one newspaper per person.
Not everyone could read.
Not everyone could read, but
was the newspaper also taxed then?
Yes. Everything with paper, playing cards, newspapers, wills, receipts, stationery, letters to friends. Again, it's one of those schemes of raising money, right? It's just like all the acts that they tried to pass in the 1760s and early 1770s. That's what they were. They were schemes to try to raise money to pay back England's massive debt. And the tax rate in the North American colonies was what? A tenth of what it was in England proper.
Oh, wow.
It was already phenomenally low.
Interesting.
As much, which makes America's not look that great by comparison.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Freed has an interesting question. Was there paper money at that time? And if so, was that also taxed?
So, there was paper money. Freed, you need to go look at YouTube. We've got a whole presentation on colonial currency.
If you're a digital member.
The bottom line is, there was paper currency because, generally speaking, England did not want its specie, gold and silver coins, to leave the country proper. So they had to use paper money or foreign specie in America as a means of exchange. So, pre-existing money did not have to have a stamp on it. Theoretically, any newly issued money would have to have this money on it, or the paper money could also come from England, where the stamp tax was not in effect. Yeah, it's...
Now,
the respective state, colonial legislatures were not supposed to issue money on their own, but sometimes in emergencies they did.
Now, I have an example of what I think is colonial money. Before I show it, is this correct? Is this right?
Yes.
Okay,
it's a James River Bank.
Yeah. I'll just share what I'm Googling at the moment. So we've got all these different paper monies.
These are called bills of credit.
Oh.
Because Most of them were issued by the respective state legislatures as a way to create liquidity in colonial economies.
Could this be basically like the first credit card then?
No, technically not. The credit's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a continental dollar. This is after the revolution has started.
Okay, so let's go back to
So
something like this would have
So
been?
yeah, something like that, or by the state of Virginia. So basically, the state would issue paper money at a certain the colony would issue paper money at certain values and put it out into exchange.
Okay.
And then the idea was that basically everyone has to believe that it has value for it to have actual value in the economy. The way the state made it have value is that the state could then, basically the state is going into debt for this money. Because the way that you can actually use this money is you can take this money issued by the state and pay it back to the state to pay your taxes.
Okay.
So it's fiat currency.
Yeah, right.
I mean, literally, they issue, if the House of Burgesses issues a £100 note that says that we issue this and it circulates in the economy, and then someone gets it and says, well, I need to pay my taxes to the state or pay for a parcel of land, I can take this and turn around, and then when the House of Burgesses gets it back, it's supposed to destroy it, thereby eliminating the debt.
Interesting. And yet we have all of these. Luckily.
This is something,
really
and
cool.
this I think I've told y'all this before, and my students, nothing bored me more than economic history 10 years ago even.
But now?
But now it's like looking at the way paper money worked and bills of credit and means of exchange and is Virginia's £1 note going to be worth the same as Georgia's £1 note? Going to be worth the same as a British pound sterling note? Going to be worth the same as a actual silver Spanish mill dollar? They printed all these charts for currency comparisons and exchange rates every year to keep up with things. It is so deliciously complicated. It is so complicated.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you are a digital member, you should definitely check out the Currency and Banking in Early America program that we have. And if you would like to become a digital member,
How can we do that?
How convenient. Well, you can go to our website and become a member at www.negahc.org/member. And our memberships are only $5 a month or $45 for the whole year. And we have weekly mini documentaries that we share. And our next one is actually going to be really cool. I'm excited about this one. It is all about the origins of Southern American cuisine. So, I had a really tough day today. I had to get a prop. I had to get a plate of delicious food from Long Street Cafe and eat the fried chicken and green beans and sweet potato casserole.
That's probably the happiest you've been all day.
It was great. But yeah, become a digital member. Again, you can do that on our website. And yeah, we've got all sorts of really cool topics coming up. So our next question comes from Alma and Gabby. Hello, Alma and Gabby, our regulars. And Gabby, it's Gabby today. Gabby is here with us today. Hello, Gabby. So Gabby wants to know, do we know anything about the Winchester House? Now,
Yes.
Okay, Marie does. Excellent. I'll find some pictures.
Yeah, we're going to need pictures.
Yeah. Explain, what is the Winchester House?
Ooh, okay, so the Winchester House is an interesting phenomenon. I think our collections and archives manager, Leslie Jones, knows a lot about this house as well. But basically, so there were Winchester rifles?
Repeating arms, yes.
Repeating arms, there we go. So I don't know as much about the gun, but I know about this house. Architectural history is my forte.
The guy invented a gun and made a lot of money. Take it away.
Thank you. Okay, so this gun, it was a repeating gun too, which means that it was able to shoot more bullets and therefore kill more people. And a lot of it was, well, sometimes guns are used to kill people and with other things. And the Winchester family, the sister specifically, started to feel like she was being haunted
Ooh.
by all of the spirits of the dead people that had been killed by the rifle or by the repeating
Whoa,
arms.
Interesting.
But of course, they also had a lot of money. So because of the gun, it sold well. People liked it. So she decides, or someone told her, like a sidekick told her that like she needed to build this house for the spirits. And also that if she ever finished the house, then she was going to die herself.
Oh,
So
my.
the house was never finished. It was never completely finished.
Oh.
Why would you?
Why would you? Because otherwise you die and the spirits kill you, right?
Right.
So, in essence, you have this insane house because it's also like she just kept building and building and building with like no plan.
Oh.
So
yeah.
you have staircases leading to brick walls, and you have a room with like 15 doors, and you have a hallway that just leads out, not to a deck, just out the side of the house on the second floor.
I'll share some pictures that I can find as
Yes.
you describe it. It looks like it might be sort of a museum-ish kind of format
Now it is.
now.
Now it is,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah, but you can see all these like glass doors, I guess.
Yes,
or-
there's
yeah.
lots of doors. There are lots of doors in the
doors.
house. Lots of places for the
Okay,
spirits to go in and out of. I think they might have been trying to trap the spirits in some of the rooms at some point.
Wow.
Because there was one point where there was a room that kind of, I think this is also in California, so there was an earthquake or something like that. And then therefore one of the rooms kind of halfway collapsed on itself and they just
Oh,
left
no.
it.
The architecture is just so interesting. I mean, what
It's incredibly
style
interesting.
would you
I would call
categorize
this a Queen Anne Victorian.
Oh, okay.
I would call it crazy.
I think it fits both definitions.
Yeah.
But you can tell it's Queen Anne because it has the multiple different depth perceptions. Nothing is
Mm.
symmetrical.
Right.
You have the tiling on it as well as some of the fun striped work, the competing colors, different arches.
So many textures.
Lots
it's so
of different
cool.
textures,
Yeah.
lots of different woodworking
I'll go
and
back to,
decorative
like,
features.
There was some like turret or what do you call this?
I would call it a giant turret.
A giant turret. I like
Yes.
that.
Because then there's a smaller turret over there
Oh,
as
there
well.
is. Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, it's beautiful from the outside. On the inside, I think to this day, no one is actually sure how many rooms that house has because there's no plan. It doesn't follow a floor plan. There was no floor plan. They just kept building on it.
Sort of depends
Wow.
upon what your definition of a
Of-
room
it-
is.
yes, it definitely depends on what your definition of a room is. It definitely depends on. People just get so confused because they're like, did we count this room? Did we go in a circle? Is this the same room?
It's
It
from one of
looks like
those,
the
how
other
many
room."
triangles do you see in this triangle?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, how many rooms do you see in this house? But eventually, the house is never finished, I don't think,
Wow.
technically. Like, I think
Yeah.
technically you could still say the house is unfinished. But of course, the lady does die.
It would be really cool to visit it.
Oh, I
though.
would love to visit
And
it.
you know,
It
you
seems
mentioned like
incredibly
when
interesting.
Would this have been closely connected to the spiritualist movement or influenced by it, or is that like not the
I
strong
don't think it's
connection?
like a strongest connection.
Okay, I
I
was
mean,
just
it's a strong
curious.
connection because it's a house built for ghosts.
right?
But I think that's about as close as you get.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
I didn't know if the woman happened to be within the spiritualist movement or anything.
Well, I
you
guess she
know.
believed in it.
Well, yeah,
She
yeah. I
built a
mean,
house
Yeah.
for ghosts.
yeah. She may have been curious.
Yes.
maybe. She might have
So
clicked
she
interested.
probably was interested or
Yeah,
had
right.
some part in it, but I don't think it was like it's not like spiritualist headquarters or anything
Right.
in there.
Oh, and Gabby says that they just went. Gabby,
Oh, how fun! Did
what
you
was
count how
your-
many rooms?
Yeah, did you get the number of rooms? They said it was huge. Please let us know what your favorite part was,
Yes.
or anything that surprised you about
Or
it.
if you accidentally almost walked off the second story.
Or if you saw a ghost. You know?
Yeah.
Excellent question, Gabby, and we're so glad that you're here with us today
Yeah.
live. That's awesome. Let's see. So we got another question. Let's see this one. I'm gonna go to Josh's question. Hello, Josh.
Hey!
And Josh is visiting Myrtle Beach right now.
Oh,
that's
how
fun.
fun.
A lot
But
of
it's
forts
spring
down there.
break. Yeah. So Josh asks, why were the Carolinas separated into North and South Carolina? That's a great question that I've never really pondered myself. So, does anybody know?
It's
Uh-oh.
basically no. It's
Oh, you do
basically
know.
because to have one Carolina was just too big. Because
For governing it.
for
governing,
governing.
and also they had different. The people who settled in South Carolina versus people who settled in North Carolina also had some differences.
Right. So they,
okay.
so it was set up from the beginning as royal colonies.
Mm-hmm.
There was no proprietorship or anything like that. The Carolinas were definitely royal colonies, and they were sent there. I mean, they were frequently referred to more as, His Majesty's plantations than it was the colonies, because being that far south, the introduction of slavery, that was its purpose, period, is to create inland, not super like backwoods, but inland plantations to grow rice, to grow cash crops, and make money off of an enslaved population. And anything else was just gravy, right? And as they eventually worked their way into the back country, into western and northwestern South Carolina and far western North Carolina, that's where the settlers come from, and it creates this huge social and political division between the western folks in each state and the seacoast folks in each state, because the seacoast are the wealthy, very closely tied to Britain politically and economically.
If you just think about, that's where Charleston is, and the giant colonial port that is probably one of, if not the wealthiest port in the South.
Right.
Here's actually a depiction of colonial South Carolina, and this is pretty neat because, I mean, there's a lot going on that you can probably get from this picture if you can see it up close. But
because that's the division of the Ashley and the Cooper Rivers. You've got Fort. I think it was Fort Caroline was actually the name of the fort there in Charlestown.
We got lots of people. We got folks
interaction with
meeting.
Native Americans.
We got people coming in with goods over
fishing
here.
boats.
We got a well. There's all sorts of things. That's pretty cool though. But like you were saying, so the main takeaway is that it was large for a colony. It was mostly dedicated to plantation farming, and so when they split, was it like, all right, you folks who want to like. What was the difference in the population again? I may have missed that.
So, South Carolina they both had plantations and were based on plantation labor. South Carolina has more though. When you think of like the rice coast and just like the incredible amount of enslaved people and the amount of wealth that is there, specifically in Charleston and the surrounding areas, South Carolina has way more wealth and enslaved population than North Carolina.
Got it. Yeah.
North Carolina is more mountainous, which
Right.
means not as many plantations, and then also is just poorer in general, just because of what happened. Basically when North Carolina broke away, it was described as like a valley of humility between two mountains of conceit, which would have been South Carolina and Virginia, which are two of like the wealthiest colonies or states at that point in the South. And North Carolina basically just got fed up with not feeling like they were being taken care of or being able to have like their own issues, because the focus was always on the South Carolina and the coast and the port and the wealth that was concentrated there. And they were like, and no one pays attention or cares about us up here in the north in the mountains mostly. Yeah. And of course there was still a large amount of slavery and plantations that were in the north, just nowhere compared to South Carolina and basically the rest of the South as well. Because when you look at the American Civil War and when it starts, who is the most fearful of losing their enslaved labor population? Who is concerned about losing literally all of their wealth? South Carolina.
Always South Carolina.
Right. Oh,
always
that makes sense.
South Carolina. Even in the colonies, when we could have gotten slavery like written out in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, South Carolina.
Well, nullification crisis, South Carolina.
South Carolina.
Yeah.
Always South Carolina.
And this is a hint too. I will give y'all this hint because your point's a good one about how it's between everything. When we look at maps now and we look at South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia, we tend to look at them as land masses. When you're studying history and you're studying especially the early periods, don't look at territorial boundaries. See if you can find something that looks at population density, because that is how you can really understand the differences in demographics and the seacoast versus the backcountry and North Carolina versus South Carolina. If you can ignore how big it is. North Carolina is a way bigger state than South Carolina, square miles wise.
It comes down and touches Georgia,
yeah.
which I always forget about, but it definitely is there.
Right, but that is meaningless, especially in this earlier period. Look at the population. That's why Georgia is the podunk colony and later state until about the 1830s.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't even scrape together a single battalion for the American Revolution.
Oh.
Whereas what we consider little states now, like Delaware and New Jersey and Massachusetts, are creating 15, 20 regiments.
Yeah, because population
we can't even
density,
population. We can't even do one.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But the South has always had a far less density in population, going back to the early colonies, because it's hot and humid, and there's bugs like mosquitoes that carry yellow fever. I mean, they're up in the north too, but there's more of them here.
Right.
And it's just always harder to survive.
So come on down to Georgia.
That's right.
Our population skyrocketed when we got air conditioning.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that was an
Thanks, World War One.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Great question, as usual, Josh. Let's see. We've also got. Oh, good. We have time. So we're gonna go back to a question that Hannah has, and then we're going to go to another question from Gabby. If anybody has any last-minute questions, do get them in the chat now. So Hannah asked. Hannah says, I'm interested in learning about the French and Indian War, thinking about following the George Washington Trail from Pittsburgh next month on the way to D.C. and then heading up to Montreal. So much to learn, so little time. Well, one, that is cool.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the French and Indian War, I mean, are there things that, like, you, Marie and Glenn, as historians, that you wish people could unlearn about the French and Indian War, or maybe the general public doesn't quite know? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people, if you ask, they'd be like, oh, it must be a war between the French and the Native Americans.
I think that's probably the largest misconception.
Yeah. And what would you want them to take away from like how it impacted, how it led us on this trajectory to the American Revolution? I mean, what would you want them to know?
People connect the French and Indian War to the American Revolution.
I never did until I worked at a museum with you guys.
Because we always just have like the American Revolution, taxes, but we never talk about why we were taxed. Because I think once you start to learn about the French and Indian War and like the taxes were to support that, it starts to be like, oh, was America right in doing that? It starts to make you kind of question that justification.
Yeah. And there's different stages of understanding the French and Indian War. I think, to begin with, I think y'all are both right in that people don't connect it to the American Revolution as closely. Mm-hmm. But then when people start to study it, all they do is connect it. All they do is they see it as a prelude to the American Revolution. And it's only after you become a super nerd about it that you begin to realize how important it is to see it as its own standalone thing. Now, everything's interconnected historically, of course. But it's so much more than just what comes before the revolution. Yeah. It is the last struggle for European dominance in the New World, in North America, between all the countries that got here first, the Dutch, the Spanish, the French, the English. The English went out. This is when that stops. This is when the Native Americans find themselves without European powers to play each other against. And it really, French and Indian War was sort of the peak of Native American independence and dominance in North America.
Interesting.
And everything after that is just sort of, it doesn't turn out well for them. At the end of the French and Indian War, the American colonists consider themselves proudly, vehemently part of the British Empire and are so proud to be that. That's why they fought, to maintain the great British Empire, and they won, right? And it's unfortunately, being here in the South, we've got a couple of little sites that are kind of close to us that we just hang on to with our fingernails. but most of it it's from New York. It's from Pennsylvania and New York up. But it's really fascinating. So those are the things I think I would really want to emphasize. And then when you super duper nerd out and you want to start reading books that are this thick, you start having to place it into the larger context of the 7 Years' War,
Right.
and how England starts out as the underdog in the 1750s in terms of European powers, and then suddenly by 1765 it's the 800-pound gorilla, right? It's beaten Spain, it's beaten France, it's taken the entire New World, or at least the North American part of the New World. It has spent so much money to defeat the forces in Europe. This is when they take in. This is when they really take India, right? And we forget that too during not the French and Indian War, but the 7 Years' War is when not only England gets North America, it's also when they wrest all of India from the rest of the European powers.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So it's Lord Clive down there in India. We forget about that. So it's
I've never connected India to the French and Indian War. So
everything's connected.
yes.
I think that would be also one of my things I would like to point out is like the French and Indian War is like a segment of a larger war.
Mm-hmm.
Like it does have a larger context, which I think sometimes people forget about as well.
Mm-hmm. Hannah also mentions that they read Northwest Passage and learned how important I'm gonna mess this up. Yep.
Michilimackinac?
Yes. Michilimackinac. Michilimackinac. That's
cool. Oh, the French and Indian War has so many ports.
Yeah, she said how important it was to trade in the West because of the waterways.
Yes.
That's fascinating too. Well, thank you for bringing the French and Indian War up. That's a great topic, and I don't know. We have a great quick history video if you ever want to share an overview of the French and Indian War on our YouTube channel. But I think we're due for maybe a proper program about it at some point.
Or some.
Yeah. So let's see. We've got time. Good. We have time for another question. Gabby, says, I'm going to visit Manzanar. What can you tell me about it? I have no idea what Manzanar is. Manzanar. What is this Manzanar National Historic Site? Let's see. The Manzanar War Relocation Center was one of 10 camps where the U.S. government incarcerated Japanese immigrants ineligible for citizenship. So it looks like this was during World War II. One of do we call those concentration camps here? What's the technical term?
We call them internment
That's what
camps.
it is. I was trying to find the word. Right.
Sometimes they are referred to as concentration camps, but I think the official
internment.
Well, it's one of those things where the term concentration camp has come to have so much baggage that while I'm not justifying the internment of Japanese Americans, it was a different critter than what went on in Eastern Europe at the Nazi concentration camps.
Right. Any context you want to provide Gabby with? I mean, I'm sure that she's going to learn quite a bit by visiting this historic site, but maybe just a little context on, especially for Gabby since she's a bit younger, why were Japanese Americans, or I would assume, was it just Asian Americans in general that were either discriminated against incarcerated during World War II?
It was very specifically the Japanese Americans on the West Coast.
Got it.
Yes.
Because we ended up at war with Japan. And the fear was that there were so many Japanese Americans on the West Coast and in Hawaii that they may rise up as sort of a fifth column and hamper America's war effort. In the very early days, there was also a fear that the Japanese were going to invade the mainland United States.
How credible was that fear? Okay.
Oh wait, you mean how much basis in fact did the fear have?
Yeah,
0.
Yeah.
But how much were people afraid? A lot.
Yeah,
A lot. So
there must have been kind of a widespread panic.
It's a war scare.
Right,
Yeah. So the federal government decides to prevent that uprising from happening, and of course to protect its citizens from violence from other American citizens. They needed to round up all the Japanese and move them away from the coast. And it's so interesting. It was racial profiling, and America also went to great lengths at this point to try to help Americans understand the difference between a Japanese person and a Chinese person, based on crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Appearance, accent, hairstyle, lots of different, because the Chinese were our allies, and we should always treat all Chinese Americans with respect. It was the Japanese Americans who might stab us in the back.
Ah, I see. Now, Freed brings up something. I don't know if this is directly related, but Freed says, have you ever talked about Emperor Norton, the first emperor of the United States of America? Does that have anything to do with...
No, I haven't. Yeah. I only know that name. I don't know what the circumstance. Is this the guy who was in the Southwest who declared himself emperor in town, and he would go around and give speeches and people just sort of humored him? Or is that someone else?
I'm going to put that on our question queue to investigate. Oh, has nothing to do with okay, sorry. I didn't know if this was like somehow related, but interesting.
But yeah, so I guess the broad context for Gabby is that consider this framed within what fear can do, not only in individuals, but in communities and nations. What happens when fear and not rationality start to drive policy.
That's that's excellent. Yeah. Well, I hope you have an awesome trip, though. It's so cool that you're visiting historic sites, and we can't wait to hear what you have learned, Gabby. So we are just out of time. Josh, I know you got a question in there. We're going to save it for next time because I do want to have time to tell you about what we've got coming up next.
What do we have coming up next, Libba?
Well, first of all, I wanted to introduce y'all. Well, eventually we'll introduce y'all, but we do have a new team member. So
Yay.
Guada, yay! Guada Rodriguez Sanchez has joined us as a new media producer, so she has been awesome. She is helping me with all things in the
and
digital
Libba's
studio.
not leaving, folks, by the way.
No, I am here. I just need help. I'm very, very busy, which is awesome. And sincerely, like, a large part of that is thanks to all of you that join us through all of our programs, our webcasts, all the teachers out there. So thank you so much for making it so we're so busy that we have to expand our team. But yes, we're really excited to have Guada on board. And you will, if you're a digital member, you're going to be introduced to Guada in our next members only mini doc, which is about the origins of Southern American cuisine. Marie did extensive research for this and also interviewed 3 really awesome experts in the topic of Southern American cuisine, from chefs to historians to food bloggers. So very exciting. If you're a digital member or you want to become a digital member, you can enjoy this program this Friday at 2 p.m. And we also have our free family day coming up. If you are in driving distance to the History Center, then we do hope that you will join us for our free family day. That's Sunday, April 10th from 1 to 4 p.m. And this is going to be all about the American Civil War. We're going to have live demonstrations, tons of awesome stations with hands-on activities. You'll even get to meet Harriet Tubman virtually and ask her questions, which is exciting. Glenn, you're also going to be leading a weapons demonstration.
No, actually, I'm going to be sitting back and watching someone else lead a weapons demonstration.
You get to actually enjoy it. Nice. Well, not that you don't enjoy making the thing go boom.
Oh, yeah, but this way I don't have to clean my musket.
Yeah, right. And again, of course, we do hope that you will consider becoming a digital member. We love our community of members, and it's only $5 a month. Or $45 a year. So we will see you again soon if you're a member, and hopefully next week as well. We've got tons of things going on, so do check out our website, our Facebook events, and we'll see you again for another Lo-Fi History in 1 month on May 3rd.
May 3rd.
All right, everyone, take care.
Bye.